Michael opened his weary eyes, blurry from sleep, and hoped that everything he experienced, the monsters, the storm, the storyteller, were only a dream, a figment of his horrible imagination. But as his vision cleared and his focus was regained, he realized that it was all too real. He groggily looked around the cabin, recalling the familiar nightmare of his surroundings, and his eyes settled on the shadow within arm's reach. The stranger sat across from him with book in hand, turning the pages until finally he stopped on a tail, then looked up to meet the boy's gaze.
Ah, you're finally awake. You've been up for quite some time, you know. Ready for a story? I know I am.
The dark figure looked Michael over and smiled.
I trust that you're comfortable. Can I get you anything? A snack? A beverage, perhaps? I do crack myself up. Shall we begin? I call this story Marrow Soup.
At the center of a small town stood a run-of-the-mill restaurant that had been around for many years. Everyone knew it well and enjoyed the food, but it certainly wasn't anything special. Traditional American food was their staple, and people seemed to like it. But the new head chef Philip was not one for mediocrity. Don't let his height fool you, he was a master chef. He had spent many years traveling the world, crafting recipes and earning awards, but finally he decided to settle down in the place he was born. So, bringing with him years of experience and prestige, he tasked himself with introducing something new to the people of his hometown. One night as the staff rushed to close the restaurant, Philip prepared a special dish that would have to sit and simmer overnight. Much of the new equipment the business used belonged to him, insisting that it was necessary in order to fuel his ideas and would only benefit the restaurant. So the manager without hesitation accepted his kind offer. He began setting up, eyeing the great big metal pot which took up several burners and stood 6 feet tall. The chef lit the burners before climbing the ladder all the way to the top, then began adding in a few basic ingredients. He leaned over the edge and peered inside, then using a large wooden paddle, he stirred the aromatic herbs round and round. Once the pot was nice and hot, the bones were next. He seasoned them liberally and in they went, followed by olive oil and chopped vegetables. He stirred every so often, scooping and turning, letting the ingredients sweat and caramelize. Philip uncoiled a hose and connected it to the faucet, filling up the pot, and there it sat until it came to a boil. He reached for the heavy lid, balancing on his toes and attempting to slide it into place as best as he could. However, the heat and steam were making it quite difficult. In the prep area, the sous chef wiped down the counters as he waved goodbye to the last of the staff. He went to the back looking for the tiny chef, but could not find him anywhere. Everything was in its place, except for the fire still fueling the large pot. In the silence, he was sure he could hear scratching, a faint echo in the quiet kitchen. He waited a moment, and eventually the sound stopped altogether. He returned to his closing duties, wondering if the chef would return or if he really left all of the work for him to complete. But when he finally walked to the back again some time later, he found the kitchen to be empty once more and the soup still boiling away. He climbed up the steps and pushed the heavy lid aside. The steam hit him with force and he reeled back, heels teetering off the ladder. He steadied himself, then picked up the paddle and slowly began to stir the pot. The aroma rose up and left the sous chef salivating. As there was no one else around, he added more water, placed the lid back, and lowered the heat to slowly simmer overnight as Philip had advised. He was the last one out that night, and while locking up the restaurant, he could not help but feel that something was not quite right. The next day, the sous chef did not find his co-worker Philip, and so he was tasked with preparing the dish to the best of his abilities. He lightly seasoned with salt and pepper, then finished with fresh herbs. Finally, he took a taste. It took a moment for the impact to fully register. The ingredients combined together to form something so wonderful that he couldn't resist taking another spoonful. It was the most delicious thing he had ever tasted. He called everyone over to try some, and they all quickly agreed that it was unlike anything they've had before. There was something about the flavor that made it so special. They couldn't quite place it, but everyone wanted more. Within minutes, it was on the menu, and soon patrons could not get enough of the daily special. The restaurant had not anticipated such a stir so quickly, but by the time dinner service rolled around, the lineup had stretched down the block and past the old cinema. Some of the customers were new, having heard from their friends or family about the delicious soup that they simply had to try, while some came back for more, returning solely for another helping of the daily special. There were, however, a few guests who found peculiar items in their bowls. They were polished metal, small and round, not unlike a button. But when staff were notified, they apologized and offered the guest a new bowl, which they eagerly accepted, quickly forgetting the foreign contaminants. Ladle after ladle, bowl after bowl, it began to disappear, and by the end of the service, the soup was nearly gone. The manager was beyond content, congratulating the staff on a successful and busy day. Amid all the boisterous shouting and excitement, he wondered to himself when the head chef would be back, wanting desperately to praise his abilities, but also to inquire about the recipe. During the night's closing, the sous chef was beginning to empty out the remainder of the soup when he noticed something odd. Along the inside wall of the big pot were long marks gouged into the metal. He called out to some of the staff members to help him, and collectively, with all their strength, they tilted the pot forward. Something shifted and a mass of fabric rose from beneath the surface of the savory broth. Confused, the sous chef used the paddle to prod further, then a form bubbled up and slowly turned over. The entire kitchen screamed in horror as the pot came crashing down, and Philip's shrunken body came sliding out onto the floor. Name tag still pinned to his jacket.
That was quite the predicament Philip found himself in. All that talent gone to waste. At least he made something of himself.
The cloaked figure howled in laughter, looking for a response from Michael, but he was silent, eyes fixed on the storyteller.
What's the matter? Don't like to laugh? That's okay. I'm sure there's something in here that you'll enjoy. But first...
The figure held the book up to the boy, and the light in his eyes drained a little, the pages undulating with an eerie light until it was still once again. Michael seemed to fall back asleep, and the storyteller smiled.
Rest now. We'll pick up where we left off. I have a feeling the next story will be a gruesome one. Until next time.